Live. The dollar goes down, oil goes down. What does it mean for Bitcoin? Isn't that supposed to be good? Well, crypto Twitter thought so over the weekend, yet Bitcoin is down. Stocks were set to do wonderful today because, again, oil was down on the latest no end of the world in the Middle East. Yet stocks seem mixed. So, what should you believe? Should you believe crypto Twitter saying a lower dollar is good for Bitcoin? Not a bad idea, honestly. Or should you believe a falling dollar and rising yen can be the ghost of 2024 when the rising yen destroyed something complicated called the yen carry trade? Which is it? We will sort that out right now. What is bullish for your bag? What is bearish for your bag? What is good for stocks? What is not good for stocks? We're going to do it right now, right here, and we're going to do it in English so you can understand it and make the next decision for yourself. This is the Market Update. I am your host, Bill Noble. If you need a roadmap in crypto, subscribe to this channel. Turn on alerts so you know when we're going live. And if the content works for you, please hit the like button. Now, let's discuss what happened last week, again, in English. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, came out and said, in so many words, I will be hanging out with my friend, the Japanese finance minister from the Bank of Japan, and we, the United States, are not going to let the yen fall anymore. That's it. So the yen went up and the dollar went down, and everyone in Bitcoin goes, yay. Dollar lower means more liquidity in the system, which should be good for Bitcoin, right? Well, crypto Twitter thought so. I thought so. But Bitcoin really didn't move. Ruh-roh. Then, setting that aside for a moment, you had the latest version of, oh my God, it's all going to blow up. And then, oh my God, it didn't. So strange that oil is down so much, like 8% as of this conversation. And Bitcoin is down and stocks are meh. I'm like, shouldn't that have been wonderful? So we have two events, a lower dollar and lower oil, that the market is like, meh. Now, what does that potentially mean? Well, it means the oil move is potentially fake as the powers that be continue to want to sit on the price of oil and not have it go up, despite the fact that this oil supply disruption is getting very, very serious. Okay. But, that's not showing up in the price. So at the moment, no one cares, or so you might think. Now, all these things that were supposed to be constructive for, like, say, stocks and crypto don't seem to be. So what's the problem? Well, we'll go into that a little more in depth. Right now, I would say this. Everybody is afraid that a rising yen can trigger the end, or worries about what's called the yen carry trade at exactly the wrong time. At exactly the time when stonks are like, oh my God, can we get our footing? I don't know about that. I don't know if they can get their footing after that insane bear market rally at the end of last week, where a lot of these stocks were up 20 and 30%. Never turns out good. Never. So back to the yen carry trade. Keeping in mind, reaction one was Dollar lower, more liquidity, good for Bitcoin. Reaction number 2. Well, if they push the yen up, that means everybody who borrowed yen to go speculate and gamble, because gambling is not just in KOSPI, by the way. Gambling is not just in semiconductors, by the way. Everybody who kind of uses the weak yen to go speculate might get hosed. Now, there was a big thing in 2024 where this problem, was very dramatic. This is not an exact repeat of that situation at all. However, the yen did rise, the dollar did fall, and everybody is going, uh-oh, at a time when the AI stocks and kind of crypto in general are still in the uh-oh phase from KOSPI and the Korean meltdown and the leverage meltdown, where, as we all know in crypto, everybody got liquidated. In crypto, we're used to everybody got liquidated, but not in legacy. So, in the event that gave you a headache, let me see if I can boil it down even further. Nobody in August is in the mood for any more worrying. People in August are like, tech stocks went down. I want to see something positive. I am sick and tired of getting smoked. Hedge funds are going out of business. Like, this leverage gambling unwind is way bigger and is, like I said last week, is not over in a day. You don't nuke KOSPI 40% or whatever, and that's it. Okay, we're done. We all go home. Sometimes you can have that in crypto, but most of the time it's not. Matter of fact, I would bring you back to October 10th of 2025 when, essentially Binance was hacked, their order book broke, and crypto had this major collapse that frankly broke the bull market and started a one-year winter that nobody thought was possible. Anybody remember that? Something similar could be happening in equities where, you have the KOSPI and the AI trade break. Then when you're looking for something good, because, a lower dollar might be good, you don't get a rally. If anything, you get kind of a slump. You're like, okay, well, this is not terrible, but I thought it was supposed to be good. Now, what does that lead to? Well, it could lead to problems in stocks, because that's the big out there, right? What's going to happen to those characters next? So there's also, setting all that aside, with the summary that, okay, there have been currency movements that should have been good for Bitcoin, but maybe aren't. Let's do it that way. And then what is the crypto news? Oh, the crypto news. Oh, no. So everybody uses AI to, not everybody, somebody uses AI to get into a cold wallet system that really doesn't touch the internet. Somebody exploits the software of the wallet company itself. They hack the software from the company, and then they figure out how to regenerate everybody's seed phrases. So they used AI, not to hack the wallets, to hack the software that runs the wallets so they could regenerate everyone's seed phrase. And then they start pulling money out to the point where even Galaxy Digital, the big crypto hedge fund, was tweeting about this for whatever reason. because I guess they're trying to use forensics or everyone's trying to figure out who this is. This is now the 5th day of this. Okay. Now, crypto is not really reacting either way, but this could be contributing to the sort of non-rally and is a little creepy because Uncle Mike sold again. Like just because, you know, I'm sorry, not just because, just after Mike goes out and boosts his cash position to like $4 billion and ends the drama, or so you would think, Mike goes out and sells another 1,600 Bitcoin. Now, I'm guessing that this is going to be like you selling Bitcoin to pay rent. Okay? And they're going to get used to every month a little mini sale. No big deal. However, the optics of this, if you put it together with the idea that Bitcoin should have gone up on the lower dollar, but didn't. Stocks were up and then they went down. And crypto is kind of sitting here with two seemingly negative headlines. So if you're wondering why Bitcoin didn't go up on the lower dollar, that's why. Now, the good news is Bitcoin is still at 62. It's not a disaster. Altcoins were up over the weekend, and we all know by now to not fall for that, right? Because they turn around on Monday and just take it all back down. I don't even get on the air with ETH or whatever up 3% and go, yay, because they just turn around and they unwind it. Because one of the things that you have to remember about all this macro stuff is that, you know, altcoins don't do well if you add enough macro pressure. Now, you are probably wondering, and we will go to TA after this. We'll go to TA after this. You are probably wondering, what in God's name are governments trying to create here? What are they doing? Like, for example, they're probably scared out of their mind about what's going on in stocks. They're probably just, the fear is probably absolutely epic. They're trying to manipulate the price of oil clearly, because of just flat out optics. Prices, at least in Texas, in gasoline are stable. How long it can stay that way, we don't know. We do know that there's worldwide problems if they keep the Strait of Hormuz closed indefinitely. We know that. We also know that the Fed needs a little help. It needs a reduction in inflation pressure, and it needs an excuse to come in and print. So at the end of the day, this thing where we're trying to help push the dollar lower, I mean, that's stealth printing. They have about $200 billion that they can use. They've only really used 5 to 10 billion, blah, 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 blah. But there's a part of me that looks at this tape and going, well, they don't want anything bad to happen at the top of their mind. But in the back of their mind, they really wouldn't mind something happening that allowed the Fed to stop the debate about inflation and start to push liquidity into the market. That's what they really want at the end of the day, because there's no way to sort out, well, the dollar's down. Is it bullish? Is it bearish? I know this is going to sound insane, and I know that the administration is very proud of what the stock market is doing. But I'm pretty sure guys like Besant and Warsh wouldn't mind a reason to come in and push money into the markets. Because really, at the end of the day, that's what would move the needle in Bitcoin. Bitcoin just goes back 1% here and there. It's like a windshield wiper on a car. It's like, okay, we like it, we don't like it, we like it, we don't like it, inside of a mind-numbingly small range. Uncle Sugar, at the end of the day, wants the dollar lower, wants oil lower, and he wants an excuse to push money into the market. Now, right now, he doesn't really have that. If they engineered a crisis, they could get it. They could get it. Because keep in mind, every big debacle that you've ever seen in equities has been engineered, even though you don't believe that, right? They literally, like the housing crisis and all these things, they can engineer these moves if they want to. Okay. So Bitcoin travels on liquidity. And with that, we'll sort of go to PowerPoint and review what we have there. Okay. Every number in Friday's deck moved. The thesis didn't break. Okay. Bitcoin sort of faded along with equities. $52 billion was spent to prop up the yen. Now, why that weakens the market, okay? Or I'm sorry, why it still matters. Japan spent $52 billion in one day to try to prop up the yen. And it didn't really work. The only way it worked is because we came in and did it. And here's the kind of the good slide. A weaker dollar is bullish for Bitcoin and bearish for Bitcoin. It depends which channel opens first. A weaker dollar erases global inflation conditions, eases global inflation conditions. Dollar-denominated debt gets cheaper. In other words, if you owe interest in dollars, a weaker dollar makes it cheaper for you to pay interest, you as in foreign countries. Hard assets and stocks and things like that, particularly stuff like gold, silver, and Bitcoin, they do good if the dollar is going down because it's liquid. Dollar going down is the same thing like as liquidity. Bitcoin is obviously the greatest expression of that liquidity trade. Now, the funding channel, which can be negative, is, the yen going up is a margin call, period. The yen going up on a continuous basis liquidates people. That's it. Bitcoin trades 24/7, so it becomes the fast cash machine. And this channel opened up on Friday night. So that's kind of the formal PowerPoint explanation. Now, here is the good news. This happened in 2024. This is not the same. It's not. The Japanese were nowhere near as aggressive in trying to defend the yen. They came to us instead. So that makes it a little bit more chill, but it's enough to make the market go, wow, this creates more uncertainty. So you have a wallet hacked, you have Mike selling to pay the rent, and then Bitcoin kind of does nothing. The greatest thing that can happen to Bitcoin, in my opinion, even though it would be negative on the first trade, is that the stock market just goes, you know what? We're not doing this anymore. We're not. We can't hold it up anymore. And I'll show you the chart that causes everybody to just lose their mind and freak out. And it has to do with interest rates. It has to do with U.S. interest rates. Now, today, it almost feels like they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do in the bond market. And I'm going to put up one chart. It may be the one chart market update. It may be. So this is long bond futures. Okay. So I know we're all talking about interest rates and all that. Let's just keep it to like the prices of the bonds without this whole idea that bonds go down and interest rates go up, and that interest rates going up scares everybody. Okay. Let's keep it simple. Bonds go down, that freaks out Bitcoin and equities. Okay. Simple. Now, as you can see, the bond market went, bond prices, the U.S. long bond, or in other words, what people think about Uncle Sugar, his inflation policies, inflation in general, blah, 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 blah. Also demand for money, right? As Uncle Sugar looks to borrow money, as the AI characters look to borrow money. Interest rates, the price of money, interest rates go up. Everybody goes, these bonds, hate them, right? AI data centers mean more bonds. Uncle Sugar, big deficit, more bonds. Supply of bonds up, bonds down. A little economics for you this morning. So down in March, range sharply down over the summer. Now, these alpha intelligence buy signals in bonds are interesting. There was a massive puke on Friday just to check everybody on their buy signal right into the Lux Algo discount zone. And now the $64 question is, can the bond market stage a rally? Can the bond market stop ruining everyone's life? Because that's what's killing altcoins. That's what's hurting Bitcoin. This keeps Bitcoin trapped in a range. This is also what can prevent stonks from recovering. So it literally is it is in many ways the one chart market update. Because in order for Bitcoin to go up, people have to stop selling U.S. bonds. Everyone is freaking out. The Japanese may have to do it. Blah, 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 blah. There's all this blah, 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 right? Dollar down, is it good or bad? Interest rates up, bonds down, is that good or bad? Well, it's definitely not good for equities. Definitely not. So we need relief on bonds. If you're on TradingView, it's ZB. So if you're trading crypto or you're looking at crypto and Bitcoin doesn't move and you're trying to figure this out, look at ZB. Okay. Next important chart, which could be extremely relevant. This is Brent crude oil. Crude oil for delivery in London. And there is one of these Lux Algo open mouth formations that, it broke out of at 92 because Friday sounded like the end of the world in terms of what they were willing to do over there. We don't really have any strategic military options that make any sense, right? So everyone's like, oh my God, he's going to lose his mind. And then he doesn't. And he says there are talks, and then somebody says there are no talks, and then somebody says the strait's open and it's not open, whatever. And they used the fact that there was no catastrophic event over the weekend to crush this down, to crush Brent CO down 7%. Now, that's fine. Okay, Bitcoin and stocks should be going up on that, but aren't. And oil is now basically returning to where it broke out from, sort of. So it breaks out of the formation, makes a return move. It's kind of done this twice. And there's a part of me that says, you know what? This rises and falls. It's not on the U.S. chart, but it is on the I call it the international oil chart. Obviously. Well, change that. Let me come off the screen. It's probably not obvious to the world that this oil situation is getting serious. Matter of fact, in my mind, the fact that they crushed it so hard this morning feels like Uncle Sugar is actually sitting on this oil futures contract. Now, there are a couple of guys like Just Dario and guys who are like pounding the table saying that literally, if you look at some of the data, the oil supply problem is getting serious. Yet the futures don't go up. They don't. So what does that leave you with? Well, it could leave you with a perfect storm. In other words, yen freak out, oil freak out, leverage freak out. That's your disaster corn on the cob stuff. Disaster corn on the cob really hasn't worked in terms of moving Bitcoin. It makes for great live stream content. The other hand, there's all this stuff that is scary, especially the decline and the leverage unwind in stonks, and Bitcoin is okay. And you know what? As I talk this through, Bitcoin should be okay. Because say oil collapses, say it is really over, say the dollar just kind of goes down organically. Man, it's terrific for Bitcoin. There's a hack. Bitcoin doesn't care. Michael Saylor sells. Bitcoin doesn't care. Now, you can have a waterfall all at once, like it doesn't matter until it does. But that's not happening right now. That's not happening right now. And also keep in mind that there are some constructive Bitcoin things out there. Like, for example, there's been $3.3 billion in puking of the Bitcoin ETF. Is there anything left? Is there anyone left to sell? Is there anyone left? Bitcoin miners, in a way, have sold all their power capacity, not all of it, but they sold their power capacity to AI companies. Now, it could be very ironic that Bitcoin mining companies took the short-term trade and went and sold the power and made a lot of money. But did they sell the low? Did they chicken out of Bitcoin at 60K when it's going to go massively higher long-term? Also, do Bitcoin miners have to continue to sell with this thing with AI revenue? Do they have to? We don't know, but it sure seems like they kind of ran away and chickened out. Now, on the flip side, and there's always a flip side, hot money has been chasing stocks. Okay. Hot money has been chasing AI, and they couldn't control themselves. They couldn't not buy the dip on Friday when everything went up 20%. The forced selling stopped and everything just, smoked higher. What happens? Okay. What happens if hot money moves back towards crypto? Because clearly hot money left crypto after October 10th of last year and started chasing AI. Well, in my mind, in order for AI to do better, hot money has to leave that space. It has to go find a new home, and they have to go find something that goes, oh, well, maybe the dollar's done going up. Maybe they're going to try to push liquidity into the market for the midterm elections. Maybe that's okay for Bitcoin. Maybe that's all right. Or maybe it's not a disaster as people pursue tokenization, as we discuss in the YouTube member area, where, we're like, hey, the next AI trade is actually in crypto. The next, like, everyone is like, well, stocks went down. Okay, well, the dollar went down. Okay, the oil. It feels like that's yesterday's news. And that kind of segues me into the bottom line. There are reasons for Bitcoin to go up. There are reasons for Bitcoin to go down. And that is most likely why Bitcoin sits completely still. because it's caught between reasons to go up and reasons to go down. And you're probably wondering at this point, what is the tiebreaker? And I have an unusual answer. So I think the tiebreaker lies somewhere in the financial world. In other words, okay, a hedge fund blows up, so what? Okay, Korean stock market blows up, so what? Nobody cares about any of these things unless they start affecting the financial centers. They start affecting banks. Because why would they put liquidity in the market? Like, why would they even do that? Everyone's talking about wash hiking rates, which I think is insane. But why would they do that? Like, what would help Bitcoin? Like, what would trigger liquidity? Well, oil stocks, dollar, it's good to know these things. But at the end of the day, how does it impact the financial companies? They got a lot of AI exposure. They got a lot of AI exposure to private credit, which is where a lot of this speculative AI lending occurs. Okay, now, private credit doesn't blow up overnight, but if there's a problem, it'll show up in financial stocks first. So Morgan Stanley made this big new high. Everything was great. That was like not too long ago, and then it slipped. You got this head and shoulders-ish formation. Right now, it's hanging around 209. Okay. Whatever happens around 209, like whatever happens in these bank stocks, I think is going to be what triggers the next move in Bitcoin. Honestly, Goldman has a 3 mountain top. So it's not a head and shoulders, but it actually is a candlestick formation. Goldman, rallied to Lux Algo resistance, and it's not clear what the future direction is, but it is clear that if it takes out this even number of 1,000, that would be a very significant technical development. It would be taking out the bottom of a 4 wave, which, I can try to redraw it here. So a lot of times when you take out a 4 wave, that means whatever trend was in place is over. So yeah, you had this big climactic puke thing here, but is it going to trade below 1,000? So you have really a complicated story that is pretty simple. Right now, Brent crude oil is at 87. 87 back from that Lux Algo formation. That's a big level. And you have another big level where you have 1,000 in Goldman Sachs' stock. Now, I'm not saying Goldman Sachs has got problems. I'm just saying you can use these investment banks as indicators as to whether or not liquidity may be coming. Because if those stocks start going down, there's a problem. You don't have to know, oh, is there a problem with a hedge fund? Is there a problem with Japan? Is there a problem with this? Is there a problem with that? You may have to just be able to boil it down to one number. At least that's what I got to do. So you're watching 1,000 in Goldman. You're watching 87 in Brent. You're going to watch ZB to see if, bonds can just stop this cascade lower. And then we'll sit and watch Bitcoin in its, like mind-numbing range to see if we can find direction. Because the way this feels, the way it feels is that somewhere in here, things are going to kind of like something's going to break. You have so much stress, and I try to keep it simple so that you could like understand it. There's so many, I would call them cross currents. Is lower dollar good or bad? Will the AI stocks recover? Does anybody want to buy? Or is it just gamblers getting liquidated one at a time? This hack, has it tarnished crypto's reputation with anyone who's left? I don't even know if anyone is left. But I'm sure the likes of Benjamin Cohen are going to be like, oh my God, look at the hack. Look at bonds. Look at this. Look at that. They're going to all pile on. Yet Bitcoin holds. So there are things you can watch. And I would imagine, just saying, that if equities don't go up, Bitcoin is vulnerable. So I can boil it down even more. Like, okay, here's one chart of bonds and two levels, 87 in crude in Brent and 1,000 in Goldman. And then you just have to simply look and say, are stonks going to go up? Are they going to go up? Or are they going to stop going down? Or however you want to say it. Okay, here is the 1 hour chart of Nasdaq. Okay. So, there's support below on a very tactical chart, on a 1 hour chart. Obviously, this recovery was monstrous, but it actually unwound everything. So what that really means is if you were short Nasdaq, you got destroyed. The longs got destroyed, and then the shorts got destroyed. However, like Goldman rallying back to resistance, this buy signal from Alpha Intelligence produced a rally. This buy signal, they ran the stops and brought it back. And they brought it back right into Lux Algo resistance. I got news for you, folks. You can have a bear market rally. This is very important. Like in bear markets, you get huge rallies once the forced selling stops. Well, in NASDAQ, here's your huge rally that runs right into a Lux Algo resistance block. Okay? Simple as that. So now the key is, can NASDAQ do another 2% rally and punch through? Maybe it's just that simple. And if NASDAQ doesn't do that, maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow. Just keep in mind that Europe is done. So there's no liquidity in Europe. And the Americans are like, oh, you think this is giving you a headache? If you're a hedge fund manager, this is driving you out of your mind. Big hedge funds are going out of business. There's all this macro stuff. Oh my God. Like in a way, us sitting here with Bitcoin not doing anything, they're jealous of us. They wish they could be like, wow, quiet, sleepy August. I can go to the beach. Meanwhile, the stuff that I trade is like, 10% up, 20% down, 20% up, 10% down. Now what do I do? It's complicated. These guys want to go to the beach. And if they don't get a recovery rally or they don't get what they want, a continuation of this uptrend, they're going to go, well, boys, we got a rally. Now we can get out and go to the beach. We can get out and go to the beach. This is like a hugely important thing. So you need a bottom in bonds. You need stocks to go up. You need the yen to just be a neutral situation. And if any of that goes wild, Bitcoin will, of course, be volatile along with it. But my concluding point, it's very weird, is that the only way Bitcoin gets out of this horrible range is to somehow get a crisis that puts liquidity into the system. And obviously, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that crises can be currency related, bond related, or stock related, right? Like U.S. bonds don't stop falling. Someone has to do something about that. If equities crash during a midterm election year, somebody has to do something about that. Okay. But, as things stand right now, Bitcoin is just going to sort of flutter around, which is what it's doing. It doesn't know what to do. It's caught between all these macro cost currents. You know, it's got its own problems, and you've got all this weird crypto news, and we sit and we wait. But I think it is very important to understand like what's going on. Like somebody says, AI is not done. It's required in the next robotics trade, just an organic pullback. Listen, this is a great point. One of the best things you can do in an uptrend is wash out excess. In other words, everyone gets excessively long, and the only way it can continue to go up is if you just wash everyone out. This happens in crypto all the time. 2017, Bitcoin is like on this, the biggest, wildest move ever, honestly. And there were 40 and 50% drawdowns to wash people out. And then we just turn around and go up. And if that's what happens in equities, well, that's terrific. That is so awesome, right? You know, but you do have to remember, you know, AI can be the greatest trade ever, but is that factored in? And what stocks are a buy and what stocks aren't? That's gonna take some creativity. It's definitely not going to be in chips and semiconductors. We've already made the call. Toby made the call that stuff is done. It's obvious that it's done because you have bag holders now that have to get out at any price. You know, there were the leverage people that got blown out. Then there's people who just own it and bought it at the wrong level, and the bag holders have to exit. Are there opportunities elsewhere? Yeah, of course. The trade's not going away. It's not the concept is not going away. The internet didn't go away when you had the problem in 2000 or 2001. So on one hand, AI is great. On the other hand, they have phony baloney accounting, and the market just has to kind of vote. Okay. So let's welcome who's here, the Warriors who came on to check us out on this new early morning-ish time frame. Yav, a member, pounding away with those member emojis. You know, you can be a member for $4.95. It's kind of like doing one super chat per month, $4.95. You don't get the research, right? But you do support the channel. The $ is at the bottom of the chat, and the membership link is down below. Keep the channel rolling. Wing Raven is here. Legend. Bull Runner in the house. Odd Dark, a Spartan Colonel. What's going on? I did look at BICO. Interesting that a cross-chain trade in crypto is the only thing up this morning. Okay. Yeah, I'm coming in loud and clear. That's good. Zapatas is here. Let's go Spartans. Welcome, sir. Moon Sector 7 is happy to catch the morning live stream. Live it. The Jeski is here, a member. Welcome, sir. Right. I'm 33 with a 401k. I'm trying to buy one BTC, right? It seems to be the only way to live the American dream. You do have to remember, folks, that all this leverage speculating in KOSPI particularly was because people can't afford anything. And the job market doesn't have the growth, so they resorted to gambling. And they went crazy doing it. Some of it was obviously driven by greed. A lot of it in Korea was driven by necessity. And you have to wonder how many people on Robinhood are doing the same thing. Okay. Somebody uses Arculus for cold storage. SJ747 has one word. He calls it DeFi. Okay. You know, people may get numb and may not care anymore. That's usually what crypto winter does. It grinds people down until they start to believe there will never be another rally again. I felt that way in 2019. I'm sure there's a way to look at the tape and say that now. But again, the YouTube member area is a constant research flow where we're telling you that some of these coins are already moving in this AI and crypto space. And there is going to be a difference between AI and crypto going forward. Everyone's like, the AI trade is not dead. Okay. Then why aren't you looking at, Morpho or cross-chain? I mean, again, this whole idea that machines are not going to participate in crypto, you're never going to get another altcoin run. Machines are not going to participate, whether it's stable coins or it's Bitcoin or it's crypto projects or whether it's like proof of who you are, right? Privacy. I mean, has anybody got any privacy, right? Cold wallets getting taken apart, whatever the software related problem is. I saw somebody like, sort of like commenting or correcting me on that. Can you shield yourself from any of this stuff? A trade that has never been done. Never been done. Haven Peck is also in the house. Okay, yeah, good. I like this. We have worldwide audience. Good evening, everybody. Okay. And of course, yes, Wing Raven brings up correctly that there is the Clarity Act. And of course, I can't help but think about the coinky-dink of a cold wallet disruption as they're doing the Clarity Act. It's probably just a coincidence, unless you're one of these people who don't believe in coincidences. At the end of the day, no matter what they say about crypto, and there's always something to say, crypto does not have the laughable gambling of the AI complex. It doesn't have the story anymore, but it doesn't have the laughable leverage. It doesn't have to be manipulated by sovereigns in order to have value long-term. The yen is falling apart. The dollar is falling apart. Bonds are falling apart. Stocks are falling apart. Is there a pattern here? I think there's a pattern. I think it's a pattern that everybody has to wake up every day and go, what's the orange man going to say? What's Bessent going to say? And what's Warsh going to say? Everything in legacy is driven by sovereigns. Do you want those people controlling your world? Like, do you want the people who are supposedly managing like beach security in Spain running your world? I don't think so. I'll live with the risk in Bitcoin. I'll live with the boredom. Because, at the end of the day, Bitcoin has a chance. It has more than a chance because you know what? This is a final word. They're going to make a mistake. Who's they? Sovereigns. Sovereigns, hedge funds, whatever cast of characters here is teetering. Somebody's going to make a mistake because it's the perfect environment to make a mistake because there's stress. It's called in economics, unintended consequences. So if you stayed here and you understood 20% of what I said, let's leave it here. There are weird things going on in legacy that could have unintended consequences. So one weird thing could lead to another weird thing. Some of that stuff could hurt Bitcoin if stocks go down, but long term, all of this is going to help Bitcoin. You'll say to yourself, wow, remember the day when fiat started falling apart? Remember the day when, they liquidated everybody in Korea and they found more stinky leverage in other places? Remember that. Wow. Remember when we weren't interested in Bitcoin because we thought it was going to go a lot lower? Same thing was said in 2022. So it's an indirect pep talk without Kool-Aid. Tried very hard to keep the Kool-Aid to a minimum. But Bitcoin, even though it has its challenges, doesn't have catastrophic problems that require multiple sovereigns to intervene to keep it from coming unglued. Stocks, bonds, oil, currencies. Is there a sector that isn't propped up by some sovereign, manipulated by some sovereign at this point? No. That's for sure. You understood nothing of what I said. Nothing. All of these things are either being manipulated, controlled, or propped up by sovereigns. You want those people controlling your life? I would say my personal answer is no. So in the YouTube member area and in Patreon, there are reports where we're like, look at this, look at this, look at this. Here's a little homework. Look at this. Why? Because one day you're going to wake up. I mean, the 4-year cycle guys are saying the bottom is in October. What is that? 2 to 3 months away? What if you could say, hey, 2 to 3 months from now, there are going to be huge opportunities. And I don't want to wait for the machines to come in and take everything up 100%. Because as somebody noted, there are these coins that, I don't know, somewhat randomly pop off. Toby's caught a couple of them. Right? But now's the time to catch them. Now's the time to do it. Not later. Now, I know you're depressed, broke. I get it. But opportunity is knocking because, again, if you list all the problems in legacy, the only solution at the end of the day is liquidity. And the biggest beneficiary from liquidity is crypto. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you watching the market update. I am your host, Bill Noble. We will see you tomorrow.